Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream are made possible by the generous support of PNC, the Chautauqua Institution, the Cleveland Clinic, and the United Black Fund of Greater Cleveland, Incorporated.
Sold out because I didn't think there's going to be a lot of people interested.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland. I'm David C. Barnett, Senior Arts Reporter at IdeaStream, and I am pleased to help bring today's forum a conversation with local, national, and international artists on art as a vehicle for activism and social change. On 90.3 WCPN, where I tend to hang out, we've got a team of reporters devoted to exploring current events, everything from opioid overdoses to charter schools to reducing city council to the proliferation of firearms. These reporters of ours fan out across Northeast Ohio, collect the facts, listen to the voices of people with a stake in the issue, and then produce stories. Well, I would like to make the argument that our guests here up on the dais at the City Club today are also reporters in a way. They examine topical issues through architecture, playwriting, acting. They take it a step further, though, by promoting social change. Let me give you a little crib sheet on all of them here. Next to me is Malaz Elgimiabi. My Sudanese is not that great yet. She's a native of Sudan who relocated here several years ago. She's an architect, artist, and university professor. She was appointed the designer in residence for the Cleveland Foundation's Creative Fusion program last year. Her big focus is nothing less than battling some of the negative effects of gentrification in the Ohio City area by designing a welcome center for some of the community's underserved residents. Omar Kurdi's day job is CEO of Friends for Life Rehabilitation Services, but he is also a Cleveland Public Theater board member, as well as being part of the new Mesra Al-Arabi Ensemble, which performs original plays in the Arabic language, including next month's And Then We Met, which goes on the boards at Cleveland Public Theater. And finally, making a quick dash in from New York City, where she will return to go on stage this evening. Nicole Salter is an actor and Obie Award-winning playwright. She's here to check in on the progress of her latest play, Breakout Session, or Fragors, which you just saw an excerpt from, which is indeed based on the City of Cleveland's dissent decree with the U.S. Department of Justice. That production goes on the boards next month at Cleveland Public Theater. Mm-hmm. All four of us are going to talk about the intersection of art and social activism for about 25 minutes, and then we're going to open it up to questions from our sold-out audience. Malaz, you're Ohio. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask each one of them a question, and then we're going to get a little dialogue going, interaction going. So Malaz, your Ohio City project is located on West 25th Street. It's across from Lutheran Hospital, if that gives you any kind of location. It's a collaboration between Cuyahoga Metropolitan Housing Authority, the Cleveland Foundation, and Land Studio. It's called a welcome center. Who are you welcoming?
So I guess that was the question
Yes.
that I had to find out.
Okay.
When I had this project that in Ohio City that seems to be already a welcoming community. It's diverse, it's thriving, it's one of Cleveland's fast-growing neighborhood. The question was, who is welcomed into that building? And that question was answered when the people themselves showed up. Mm-hmm. As we did this design process. So I guess it is the community, the diverse community of Ohio City, regardless of their socioeconomic classes, regardless of with all their cultural, racial, and age backgrounds. It's also for the people who are serving in the neighborhood, the institutions who are part of that fabric of the community. And it's because of the location of it being by the Cuyahoga River and as a gateway to the west side. It's really welcoming to everybody in Cleveland.
To find out more about this area that you're serving now, I suggested a couple minutes ago that you're kind of like a reporter. You certainly did some research in an unusual way. Tell us about that. You were an Uber driver.
Yes, and I earned more money than an architect. I should leave that then within my CV now. Yeah, well, one of the things when I start a project that in a neighborhood that I don't really know much about is to get to know how people experience their neighborhood, and just helicoptering to people's lives and say, hey, can I talk to you? Excuse me, I have this question for you. They didn't seem really genuine, and I wanted to have an organic conversation with the people, and I didn't know how. I'm new to the neighborhood. I have an accent. I wasn't sure how the conversation go, knowing that there's so many faces to Ohio City. So I decided just to drive an Uber. So I would just go next to the West Side Market every morning, and I turn on my Uber and Lyft. And just to let you know, Lyft is more popular with African American community, so Uber needs to step up the diversity game. And yeah, it was most of what I learned more from this conversation was what really united the community. People who were, for example, came to the Uber, they wouldn't have had the chance. Maybe they were busy, they had work, they need to they have children. I wouldn't have had the opportunity to talk with them in the regular setup.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So I learned how a mother has to go to a whole next side of town to have an abortion. Or I learned how people would have to drive or go in Uber for like 3 miles to have an affordable meal. I also learned that how many people who moved into the neighborhood because of the diversity that it portrays haven't really formed any genuine relationship with the community around them, and they are eager and hungry for that. So yeah.
Omar, you are now a member of the theatrical community. Did you have a background in theater before you started this?
Not professional. I mean, always performed since I was 6 years old in school performances. So this is my first time in a professional stage.
You told me that there's a kind of love-hate relationship towards the arts in the Arab-speaking community. Why is that?
It's not love-hate as much as we're obviously a community that is very rich culturally, and we love to watch theatrical work and we love to watch the arts. But as families, we do not think that art provides financial security, so some families advocate against choosing art as a career. So we love to go watch it, but we don't always have people doing it.
That sounds familiar, right? I dropped in to see a rehearsal a couple days ago, and you're exploring some taboo topics. Are you worried that when the show opens, people are going to be throwing tomatoes at you or anything like that?
I'm actually more excited to see our community and the community at large be open to see these topics discussed on stage. And what really matters is that we have this platform to be represented. And it all starts with representation. If you look at the history of Arab American community being represented, I mean, just let's talk about Hollywood. You would have a non-Arab actor play an Arab character. And then when we had an Arab actor, they were playing non-Arab characters. And then when we finally had an Arab actor, they were playing Arab characters that were terrorists. So it didn't take until, I think, 2018, when that show Rami came out on Hulu, that we finally saw a normal Arab American family on television, and it's kind of sad and upsetting. But what's encouraging is that we have places like Cleveland Public Theater that provided my community a platform to just be represented. and to just have a place to tell our stories, and to just be open about our experiences as Arab Americans living in Cleveland, and to give the Cleveland at large community an opportunity to come learn our stories. And honestly, you're going to realize that all our problems are universal. We just differ with maybe the way we talk, the way we look, but honestly, our problems are universal, and every community has its own spices.
There you go. Nicole, Raymond Bobkin came up to you, contacted you, and said, I think there'd be a really good play about Cleveland's consent decree. What was your immediate reaction to that?
Boring. Sorry, Raymond. But truly boring.
And how did that evolve? What happened?
Well, I, like my colleagues here, believe in the transformative power of the arts. So just because I wasn't immediately interested doesn't mean that it wasn't stage-worthy or a valuable endeavor. And CPT and Raymond proceeded to open the city up to me in a way that I have never been invited into any city that I've been a commissioned writer before. I spoke with your mayor. I spoke with your chief of police. I spoke with your council members. I spoke with heads of Black Lives Matter. I spoke with officers. I spoke with community members. I spoke with head of community policing. Like, these people in most cities you don't have access to, particularly if you don't live and vote where they are. They're like, why am I talking to you? Like, what you got? And I was blown away by that access. So began to feel a responsibility grow and an interest grow in the matter.
You, when you were doing that, you went to the mayor, and you saw the mayor and the chief of police, and you were scheduled for 15 minutes.
And we spoke for hours.
Wow.
Hour and a half.
Yeah.
So obviously they're probably a little hesitant.
But I'm charming.
There's the answer. Did you go into those sessions with a list of questions?
Oh, absolutely. I was only scheduled to be there for half an hour. I wanted to hit some key points and get a clearer understanding of how the consent decree was affecting the work that they were doing as elected officials, appointed officials. But everyone in this city seemed to have a real stake in the matter. And I had a lot to say about the impact that it was having, positive and or negative, about its origins, and about what they thought it should be. And that process really showed me how important the issue was, and how much people had at stake, and how that stake was prohibitive in conversation. Because when you have a lot to lose, you can't afford to consider other things. And so it greatly informed how I went about creating the work that I did at CPT. Also, Raymond has a wonderful way of being welcoming and inviting to everyone. And in my research, I found that there are people that CPT know very well who were not on the same side of things. So I said, I can't write a play that kind of takes an angle. I have to write a play that brings them together the way that Raymond has.
Now, Omar, you're collecting your information also. I mean, how is this play constructed?
So back to this genius right here. Raymond,
It's like a love fest.
truly a genius, actually, and everybody give him a round of applause. He
Yes.
deserves it. So Raymond has this magical way where he could put so many different people in one room
Yes.
and make them all magically. We just start talking, and there's literally like just a little bit of guidance, but we just talk about our problems, about our history, about our lives, and he puts it all together in a production that makes sense. Because when you look at our stories before they go into production, I'm like, everything is just so different. Like, this is like a story about hijab, and then you have a story about a family, and then you have a story about war. But then Raymond magically puts it all together and all makes sense. So the process of making our productions is so enjoyable because we actually get to learn while we're making a production. This group right here, some of members of Masrah Cleveland Arabi are here. We didn't know each other. We didn't know each other before coming together to make the production, and we didn't even try to be friends, but it just happens naturally because we actually know so much about ourselves. And that's how it happens, and that's how the information is collected, and there's no like pressure, there's nothing. You just feel comfortable in the room because you're given that freedom to finally be who you are and to finally own your narrative. And that's what makes it special, because we are owning our narrative, whereas everybody else out there think that they own our narrative. There's a fun quote that says, people, non-Middle Eastern, non-Arabs or non-Middle Easterners go to the Middle East for a day and they write an article. They go for a week and they write a book. They stay for a month and they write nothing. And because they don't know. And with CPT, they are the learners. We are learners, but they are the learners, because Raymond sits there and he absorbs everything. Faye sits there and they absorb everything. And they allow us to actually own our narrative. They give us the guidance, but they allow us to actually own our story.
When you say they say for a month they don't write anything, is because why? They suddenly realize, oh, I really don't know what I'm writing about.
Because they realize it's not their story to tell.
Yeah, okay.
And that's the problem today, especially in our crazy political world. You have all these people showing up on TV claiming they're experts, but they really know nothing. Have they lived through the civil war in Lebanon? No. Have they lived through the Palestinian-Israeli conflict? No. So you're not an expert. You might have read 25 books, but that doesn't make you an expert.
Malaz, one of the interesting, when we were talking, and I got a tour of the Welcome Center a couple days ago, and one of the things I found interesting was that you hear the word gentrification and it's always pitched as negative. And you said that there's like a plus side to gentrification for the neighborhood and the downside. Talk about the plus side as far as the residents were concerned.
Well, it's not my say, like what Omar said. It's what the residents told of what it means to them to be in a neighborhood that is changing. Some of them have lived in this neighborhood for a long time. And I worked with residents of the two CMHA public housing properties, Lakeview and Riverview.
Right.
Both have around, both in total have like maybe 2,000 residents in between them. And with Riverview being a senior housing. A lot of the people who lived in Riverview, the senior housing, also lived in the townhomes before that were families, so they were there from when they were kids. And they've seen the transformation of the neighborhood. And there was one of the positive things that came in those conversations is how with gentrification comes resources, like resources that leads to safety.
So it becomes a safe neighborhood, because that was not a safe neighborhood. I remember that.
It wasn't a safe neighborhood. I mean, it still has its problem up to until today.
Yeah.
But there's a large amount of sense of safety in the neighborhood now, with the resources that is available.
And just the amount of people walking around.
The amount of people walking around, the services that is there now, like the proximity, like there's a grocery store in the neighborhood. There is a better and improved transportation system. There are a lot of institutions that who have been working, the charities, the churches, the religious institution, and the nonprofit who's been working in the neighborhood for a long time, serving the homeless population, the low-income families, the immigrants. There's a lot of thriving community of service that is also benefiting from some of these resources. Now there is other stuff that also comes negative with gentrification, like the segregation that starts to happen when between people, and that segregation, which might not sometimes be racial, it can be economical, and a lot of people in their neighborhood can feel alienated from the services that they see. That this thriving culture, they can't be part of it. They can't afford a meal right down the street. They can't invite their family for a cup of coffee.
And to get a cup of coffee, you were telling me they get on a bus, right? And go to Clark Dennison or something like that.
Yeah, the cheapest cup of coffee in Ohio City probably costs you about $3.
Yeah.
And if you want to have a cup of coffee every day, that's for some people that's third of their income. So that's not possible sometimes. Yeah.
Nicole, some of the reality that you're dealing with, the core of your story has to do with a fictional firm that the city of Cleveland has hired to conduct implicit bias training. Was there a particular audience that you're aiming for in that story?
My audience is always everybody. My audience is always everybody. Yeah. I don't think there's a particular audience as much as there is just a slight correction. They're a firm seeking.
Seeking, they haven't gotten it
They
yet.
haven't gotten the contract. But I really want to talk to everyone. One of the things that I try to do in my work is to get beyond the facts and get down to the truth of the matter, which is why fiction is appealing to me, because when you deal with the facts in a documentary style of creating narrative, you can often get bogged down and not underneath the core universal human needs that are at conflict. You can just talk about the kind of surface issues with the difference between, affirmative action and some other policy, right? But at the heart of the matter around the consent decree, I'd found is the issue of trust. So let's talk about that. Let's get to the root of that. What is it? What is trust? Why do human beings seek it? What do we think we're going to have when we get it? What do we think we're going to lose if we lose it? And so while the play allows for the conversation to happen about the topical issue to kind of draw you in, at the root of it, it's about those human issues. And hopefully, yay, Beth Wood, my director, hopefully dramatizes why the issue is so complex. We all sit in the silos of our communities and we have discussions about these topics and we go, well, why don't people just do that? Clearly that's the answer. Like, that was stupid, But when you find a story that merges the complexity of that, you can say, oh, that's the root of the conflict. That's why this will always be a problem, because I don't trust you. So how do I trust you when I don't perceive what you perceive? And you don't perceive what I perceive? How can we come to see each other's different perceptions as complementary and trust you anyway?
For all of you, what do you see? You were getting at that, Nicole. What do you see? What is it about art that lends itself to addressing social issues?
I can go, I guess.
Yes.
Go.
It's a universal language. I mean, let's talk about music, for example. I mean, we can all enjoy music in a language that we don't understand, and we can all feel the magic behind it. We all often watch foreign films, and we all enjoy them with subtitles or not, and you could feel it. And something like that happened when we did our first production, Dream of Home, Halum Watan. We had an audience member that was from the Dominican Republic, did not speak Arabic nor English. So our productions come with super titles. So whatever's in Arabic is translated, whatever's in English is translated. This lady spoke no Arabic, no English, Spanish only. And she came to us after the production and she was crying. She was like, I didn't understand it, but I felt it. And that's the power of art, because if you don't feel it, then there's no point behind it.
Malaz, you are using art to create a space for people to live and work in. Talk about that.
But the way I look at art in a more of a functional. So for me, art is a tool. As it's not the output itself. The output is the issue that the art is trying to address. And for example, like when we worked on the project for the Riverview, we established values in the community because we wanted to use those values as the pillar for our design. We went and talked to the people, we established what are the values that are going to bring people together to form a community that is inclusive of everyone, that is diverse. But the fourth value that's inspired the art that brought people together was dignity. A lot of people spoke of an issue they experience, a feeling they experience in their neighborhood, that when they want to feel dignified in their community. And we went around and asked, what does that mean for you? And what she says, like, what do you perceive as dignity for you? Some perceive dignity as the ability to contribute, to be of value to my community, to not be seen as someone who's redundant. And
Or taking advantage of it.
or taking advantage, or someone, the dignity is to be able to provide for my family.
Yeah.
But one simple thing that I kept hearing was the dignity is to be seen. Simple action of being seen as part of the community, someone to look at you, recognize you as a human. And that's when the art became the tool. Then we decided to do the photography project, the Inside Out, where we took 250 portraits of people from the community of Ohio City, people who lived in the community, people who worked there, the people at high positions at the Lutheran hospitals, as well as nurses, security guards, residents, children, everyone, and then use that art as the tool to bring the people together.
Where did you put those photographs?
On the building,
On the actual building?
On the exterior of the building, we wrapped the whole building with photographs of the community. And by that, we wanted the art to be the statement to say, okay, here's us, and this is what we value, and this is how we feel, and so then the art become the call of action and not the action itself. So people can come and say, okay, here's the call of action, what do we need to do now?
I'm David C. Barnett, Senior Arts Reporter for IdeaStream, and today at the City Club we are listening to a forum on art as a vehicle for activism and social change, featuring Malaz El-Jimiabi, interdisciplinary designer, artist, and professor, Omar Kurdi, Cleveland Public Theater board member, and Masra Al-Arabi advisory committee and ensemble member, and Nicole Salter, actor and Obie Award-winning playwright. Her latest work is Breakout Session or Fragors. We're about to begin the audience participation section. Now you've been in the audience just sitting there and looking and taking it all in. Now we'd like to hear from you. Questions that maybe we've inspired her, or maybe additional comments that you'd like to make about the intersection of art. We welcome questions from everyone, City Club members, guests, students, or those of you joining us via our live stream or radio broadcast on 90.3 WCPN in the few seconds that it's left before we go back to impeachment. If you'd like to tweet a question, please tweet it at the City Club, and the City Club staff will try to work it into the program. Holding the microphones today are content and program coordinator Bliss Davis and the City Club's communication and marketing person Julia Wong. May we have the first question?
I suppose this is a chicken and egg question. Places like Hingetown, Ohio City, Tremont have developed rather diverse communities and a very active arts presence. If you had your way and you were looking at something like the Opportunity Corridor, how would you involve the arts in the development of that area?
The way I would look at it is to start with who is in Opportunity Corridor and have that discussion with them. Ask the people who are there, who are going to be impacted by the art, impacted by the project in form of, like, whether it be an architecture project or an art and architecture, and see what value it's going to bring to their life. What are they trying to use this art to achieve? I had the talk before with Terry Schwartz, who worked with Opportunity Corridor. She's the head of the CUDC. And we talked about things like making an art museum in neighborhood where it's not traditionally seen as an acceptable location for it. Bring in good quality art, fine art, community, fostering and nourishing the community itself, the art within the community, in a really resourceful environment. But this was a suggestion. Now, what I would do is take that and check it in with the community. See, is this a good idea for you? How do you see the value of art? And start there. So instead of me trying to immediately impose what I think the neighborhood could benefit from as an art project.
Another question.
So I see on the community center side how the output of art really naturally kind of reaches kind of a wide, diverse group of folks. On the artistic side, in terms of when we have productions that are detailing social activism, a lot of times these productions kind of end up in their own silos or their own echo chambers and only reach the people who already get it, frankly, right? So what on the artistic side, what kind of things do you think could benefit to creating a production that's really accessible to bringing in people that really need to hear what you have to say versus just kind of remaining insular, And I see, sorry, on the last note, on the remaining insular side, I see how the advantage to that to energizing the base, and really kind of, serving that function. But I'm just curious on the outside to bring people who really need to hear these messages into the theater.
I think that's a huge issue in the American nonprofit theater world especially, but in general. I think it speaks to the quality of the institution you're dealing with when you think about their capacity to do that or not, or their willingness to do that or not. When you're working with a place like CPT, and some other places that I've worked at, Luna Stage in New Jersey, places that are looking to fill the conventional form where people come to the theater from their subscription base, but also ways in which they can take the work to people that they feel could find it useful. Those models sometimes are poo-pooed because there are no awards to get from taking your work to the community. The Times is not going to come review that. There's no glory in that. So the people who are doing it to have the conversation with the community for the benefit of the community. So I think it's happening perhaps more than you might think, but there's no glory in that work.
Omar, I'm wondering, I didn't ask you, who are you playing to with these productions? Are you playing to the Arab-speaking community that's saying, hey, here's a play that's talked in my language, or are you speaking to a larger community to understand who we are?
Both, and I was actually planning to answer part of this question as well, because while we're not really touching on a lot of social justice topics, we're just beginning to tell our stories on stage. And that is the beginning of a conversation, because this is something that has never happened in Cleveland. I mean, I don't want to speak about the country as a whole, but I mean, I'm sure there's not a lot of Arabic-speaking theater companies around the country. So this is something that is very unique, not just to Cleveland, but to the nation as well. So that is a conversation starter. Second, from just looking at the audience member that came to our 4 sold-out shows, actually, there was a majority of actually like half and half. There was a balance of like non-Arab audience members and Arab audience members, and they were both very engaged. And some people returned to second shows that came to watch it again. One key story for me that I think actually just summarizes this whole answer is we had an audience member who is, she's a Palestinian lady who is dating, she's dating an American, and she wrote Raymond an email. And she said, for the first time, I felt so proud to be an Arab American because my boyfriend got to see part of my culture that he doesn't see on the news. And that's what we're doing. We're starting a conversation about like, look, this community exists here, and you know what? They're not scary. Yes, their food is amazing. in my opinion, the best cuisine on earth. And their food is amazing, their songs are fun, and their stories are similar yet different. So that alone is a conversation starter. And my goal is for everyone to come watch our shows, because we are never limited to a specific audience member. Art does not have a specific audience. Art is for everyone.
Nicole.
I just want to say that in our country, our culture treats art as though it's this thing that you do for diversion. It's what you do when you're not at work, when you want to lay back and don't want to do anything. But
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah.
okay, I think entertainment is our engagement principle that draws you in and allows you to stay for the experience, but that's not the purpose of it. The purpose of the art, largely speaking, all arts, is to bring consciousness to our collective evolution. Who are we? Do we like who we are? What if we were different? How can, like, that's the point of the kind of secular sacred world that we invite people into. And so I feel like a lot of the work that needs to happen is about the re-education of the American populace, particularly, but perhaps globally, around the usefulness of art. There's a reason why the nonprofit world of theater sits with the nonprofit world of churches and schools. They're all 501c3s. When you go to school, are you like, entertain me? When you go to church, you're like, oh, this pastor sucks. He should tell a joke, you know? Like, no. You go because you know you're going to be nourished spiritually, intellectually, psychologically. And that's what the arts are for. So when you're seeking nourishment, you engage art. Whether that's healing, whether that's enlightenment, whether that's catharsis, whatever that nourishment is. And if all you're seeking is diversion, you've missed the point. And actually, I think you're also lying to yourself, because when you think about the stories that resonate for you in your life, the ones that you refer to that have nothing to do with your experience, when you quote Yoda, do you know Yoda? Did you have a personal experience? It's a make-believe thing, yet it had a resonance with you that has guided principles and relationships in your life. You know, I know many black women out here are like, till you do right by me, everything you do is gonna fail. You know, like, that has nothing to do with anything you've actually experienced. You don't live on a farm in the South. You live in Brooklyn, you know, like. But there's a reason why those things resonate with you. It's because it's sitting at the root of the purpose of the purpose of the art. That's what it does, and that's why it's powerful. Because it can change your perspective on something. It could change the way you treat somebody.
Amen. We have another question.
Yes, I was just wondering, this is for the panel as a whole, if you can talk about how your experiences and collaborations with foreign-born people have enriched what you give to us.
Foreign-born people.
They all have to be foreign-born?
I'm okay. I'm highlighted here. Do I have to leave?
No.
Okay. So, well, I'm a foreign-born person here, and thanks to President Trump, I am here actually. I'm Sudanese, and my country was part of the travel ban. I ended up staying in Cleveland because I couldn't leave Cleveland. So, but a lot of the people I've met, whether it be me or a lot of people who were born outside, they want to be part of the community. In this new community, they want to contribute. They want to continue their contribution to whatever place they are. And one of the things, for example, during this project, we're doing the community outreach to try to talk to people about the design of this community center in Ohio City. And I went to Lakeview And I was talking with the management, and they said I think they said we think there's a Somalian family here. And I said, well, can you please call them and let them, there's a Sudanese woman. They just want to meet you. We didn't say anything about what we were talking about. And I waited at the community center, and like 4 women came with their children. They said, where is the Sudanese sister? And I sat there for 2 hours trying to explain the project. We don't speak the same language. We come from different cultural backgrounds, but it was very important for me that they understand that their voice matter in this conversation. And as soon as they realize that this project is a project for the whole community, that it's a park where they could take their children to, instead of taking them to the one that is 5 miles away, as they became so engaged into the project, they graced us with amazing food. Now I said Somalian food is better than Arabic food. But
Technically, they're Arab, actually.
Okay, they're not.
They're part of the federation, whatever.
There you go.
But yeah, they shared their food with us. They cooked for all our design charrettes that we held. And then not only that, they contributed with their voices, their vision for the neighborhood. And they continued to be involved in our art project.
It's cool.
So, but also I want to say something, that nobody, for example, I'm foreign, and obviously I was, when I was talking to people, the first thing they would say is, where are you from? I was never made to feel foreign here by the community that I worked with. Because I think a lot of the people understand that we are same inherently if they can see that you're genuine about your intentions toward them, or they can trust you, which was what you were mentioning earlier. The boundaries of being born inside or being outside of which race you are or which nationality you are, it starts to dissolve. And we really just meet as people. I probably have more common things with the residents in Riverview, because I grew up with raised by my grandmother. And as soon as I walked into that building with senior housing, and I just felt home. So I felt the warmth of the people that welcomed you. My son, my 6-year-old son, would come and play violin inside, and everyone would give him $1. So I feel sometimes there are people who feel foreign in their own country, foreign from the people in their own community, without even being born outside. So,
I want to add something to that. While I'm not foreign-born, I'm part of the scheme that Trump is trying to change. My mom came here to deliver me because the American passport was always the dream. And I'm very thankful for actually being an American citizen, because I get to do things that I love here. But we have, and I'm going to speak about our theater group, مسرح إقليم العربي. We have members that are not just only foreign-born. We come from so many, not just different countries, but also different religious groups. And that alone is so rich. We have Muslims that are Sunni, Shiite, and then we have Christian, and then we have members of the Druze faith. And when we're all in that room, we are no longer foreign. Because what unites us is that message that we have a story to tell. And when you have a story to tell, and when you know that there's a negative perception of your whole community as a whole, not just one specific faith, they don't only tell stories about a certain faith group, they just tell stories about us as a whole. So that unifies us, and we're no longer foreign in that room when we're trying to tell a story. And that goes with what Malas said, that sometimes I feel like it's our responsibility too, whether we want to feel foreign or not, because we can also create that live stream. I was not raised here. I was raised in the Middle East, and I could have came here and I could have just stuck with whatever I learned over there and didn't allow myself to absorb what was provided to me here. And then I would have stayed a foreigner. But I don't see myself as a foreigner because you could throw me in whatever random country in the world and I'm going to try to become that person from there, because that's how we change the world. So it's really on us whether we want to feel like foreigners or we don't. And we should not listen to the people that want to make us feel like foreigners, because they don't get to decide that. So when somebody says, and there's a term that they use in the Arab American community, and like I used to be called the boater. So like I'm fresh off the boat basically, and I'm like, I mean, I use a plane. So and I'm like, I don't think I'm a boater. I don't think I'm any of that. I mean, I'm here. This is my home, and I'm gonna make it my home. So you don't get to call me a boater because I could call you something else, and I could, busser or whatever. But like, I mean, I don't know how they were conceived. But the point of the matter is like, it's no one's responsibility, and it's no one's right to call you a foreigner or not, because when you're in a place, that is your place, and you make that place your place. So that's it.
I think we got another question over here.
So I'm not sure if you all's familiarity with Daryl Davis. He was a jazz musician whose notoriety came outside of music. But I listened to him speak yesterday, and he spoke about the evolution of ignorance to destruction, and how we don't understand things, and in turn it leads us to not want them to exist on a more drastic level as it evolves. So as people who create art, how do you help bridge the gap between ignorance and understanding in a form, in a something that is very easy to construe or change how you receive that medium?
To me, that's the purpose of story. You go to see how and why a transformation occurs. Have you ever been to a film or a play or read a book and it was like a person goes to the grocery store, and then you turn the page and it's like they're king. And you're like, how? And why? That's the whole point of engaging the art form of storytelling. Life won't tell you how or why, right? Things happen and you're like, how, why? You'll never get to know. But the reason that the narrative form, I think, was birthed in the human spirit long before language actually was birthed, is because we want to share how and why the transformation occurs, how you can repeat it, how it could be possible, et cetera, et cetera. So I think when tackling ignorance, being able to show how and why something is helps with understanding. But it doesn't necessarily help with trust, because trust is not something, there's the adage, trust has to be earned. You have to earn my trust. But really, if you make a bunch of people jump through hoops to earn your trust, you can also just decide still not to give it.
That's true.
Because I just don't trust you, right? So you can also trust something you know nothing about. You have no understanding how the food got to your plate, but you ate it. Right? You have no idea how the plane works, but I'm about to get on it, and I hope it does work. Do you know what I mean? So trust is an interesting thing, which the benefit of my learning from writing this play is how that works.
Another question.
Our next question comes from Twitter. It reads, I have long regarded the walls of the inner city as a canvas for the poor. With public art trending in the city, it feels that the aforementioned canvases are now exclusively commissioned by institutions. Where and how can the poor find their voice in this changing landscape?
So I have that decision can come from the institutions themselves. If the structures of funding and how to create art and all of that comes from philanthropy, it's channels, there's this like bureaucracy that goes to the 501c and then or to the artist. But a lot of institutions or people who hold power in terms of either form of money or decision making, like city CDCs, the corporate, the developments, that they can, as part of, they are CDCs, inherently this is their job, to create, to use those resources they have with the community. So making the artists is not the people who are from the community, like the artists, whether they're, whatever that community is poor or not, they are rich in talents, to actually be the one who are making the art. In our project, the Riverview Welcome Center, when we did the outprint and imprint, it was a conscious decision to do the photography, not only by one single artist, like let's say I was the lead artist, right? But to reach out to see who else in the neighborhood can contribute to that work. And actually we have here Michael Cannon, who was the second photographer and resident of Riverview, that as soon as we learned that we have this common interest in art, which is photography, another also photographer, Casey Rayrick, who's also a local from the community, we decided to do the project together. So even an institution CDCs or funders can create art projects that are with the community as opposed like for them. And yeah, maybe it's sometimes it's top down, and sometimes it's the artist decisions themselves. But I find it more practically is when the people who hold the decision making makes that clear in their intention when they're doing the artwork. To say, are you working with the community? Who are you working with? And how? Have you explored option beyond yourself as an artist or as an institution? Kind of like, so.
Another question.
Hi, I just wanted to go back to the trust. The way to show trust is transparency. Transparency is very difficult for some people, but just being yourself and being open to others and showing your spirit and just who you are as a person, that's how you earn people's trust. Because if you give that transparency, you'll probably get it back. And I was just hoping that, can you tell us how you would be able to give that transparency for the board, the panel, I mean, in your communities? How can you do that to bring the communities together because you have a platform to do so?
Is that for me?
All
of us.
All of us.
I mean, we bring transparency when we establish a conversation with all members of the community. Everyone is invited, and I'm going to speak about my experience with CPT. Everyone is invited to be part of the conversation. So when we tell our stories, these stories are based and inspired by the stories of people who actually came to be part of the conversation. Our conversation also continues over social networking sites. It also continues between friends and families. We have an advisory committee for Masrah Cleveland Al-Arabi that is very diverse, where the conversation continues there. So I think transparency begins when you open that door for everybody to be part of the conversation. And that's something that I'm very proud to have with Masrah Cleveland Al-Arabi, because you truly see that just with who's part of it. I mean, you look at that table, and I mean, we have someone who wears a hijab, and then we have some Lebanese cast members, and then we have an Egyptian who grew up in Saudi Arabia, so that's like double the effort. And then you have Hussein, who is an incredible, I wish I could say like 7 million times artist, who's from Iraq, who is here in Cleveland and is finally breathing, and I say the word breathing because he could finally work in art through CPT. He came here as a refugee. He had an amazing career in Iraq, being doing set design for Iraqi television. And then he came here as a refugee, lost everything. Obviously, art was always there. And then CPT came, giving him, and we have another amazing artist who's not with us here. His name is Abbas Al-Hilali, giving them that chance to finally breathe through their art. And that's transparency in itself, because they are finally being able to be themselves. They're finally allowed to break free from their refugee status to become the artists who they're meant to be. And I think that's something that I'm very proud to have through our experience with CPT. And I wish that you could have a chance to hopefully look at some of his art pieces because he's amazing. And عم بحكي لهم عم بحكي لهم قديش انت بني ادم مش طبيعي، فنان مو طبيعي، وقديش مبسوطين فيك. And he's also our scenic designer for this production. So when you come watch us, hopefully, you better buy your tickets. I'm going to remember all your faces. So if I don't see you there, I'm going to find you through the live stream.
Today at the City Club, we have been listening to a forum on art as a vehicle for activism and social change. You just heard from Malaz El-Jimiabi, an interdisciplinary designer, artist, and professor. Omar Kurdi, who is CEO of Friends for Life Rehabilitation Services, but also a Cleveland Public Theater board member, and Masra Cleveland Al-Arabi Advisory Committee and ensemble member, and the commuting Nicole Salter, actor and Obie Award winner. She's the playwright of Breakout Session or Fragors. Support for student participation in City Club forums comes from Char and Chuck Fowler Family Foundation and the William M. Weiss Foundation, with additional support from the donors you'll find listed in today's program. We're happy to have you here. And that brings us to the end of today's program. We thank you, panelists, and we thank you, members and friends of the City Club, with special thanks to our City Club members whose financial support makes the work of the City Club possible. To find out more about upcoming forums, you can click Support the City Club. You can click over to cityclub.org. We've been talking about transparency, we've been talking about respect, we've been talking about trust. And all the more important is face-to-face communication and getting together and talking about this stuff where you're talking right to the person, okay? That's the forum for today. I'm David C. Barnett. Thanks for joining us today. Adjourned.
Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream are made possible by the generous support of PNC, the Chautauqua Institution, the Cleveland Clinic, and the United Black Fund of Greater Cleveland Incorporated.